Okay, folks, we're about ready to get started here. If you're just coming in, that's fine. I understand some parking was quite a distance away. I'm Elaine Johnson. I'm president of the League of Women Voters Greater Omaha, and I certainly want to welcome you all this evening and thank you for coming. And thank you to our speakers, and thank you to Brian Astley, who's going to be our moderator. I'm just here to, for transparency reasons, to make a statement about the League of Women Voters and who we are and what we do, just so that'll be clear from the beginning. So a lot of you know that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We work to increase understanding of major policy issues, which we're all about tonight, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. We never support or oppose any political party or any candidate. And so now I'm going to read you the statement of our policy on the death penalty. This was adopted in 2006 by our national organization, and that statement is, the League of Women Voters of the United States supports the abolition of the death penalty. So just for transparency's sake, I'm going to hand this right. Cards, if you didn't get a card to write a question on, they're back there, or you could just raise your hand and someone will bring you one. Okay, thanks again for coming. Turn it over to Brian.
We have to share one microphone here, so bear with me. Should we do the ground rules, gentlemen?
There's rules.
Sure. Each get one punch? No. Thanks for coming. So we have, really in essence, two that are sort of hold one position, two that have another position, just to kind of keep it even. But remember, this isn't a debate, it's a forum, so question and answers, but it'll start off this. So we drew straws, is that what we did, or marbles or something like that to pick out this initial speaking order. We get a minute just to do kind of an introduction. And then we have the first set of questions from the League of Women Voters that they kind of pared down and figured out what would be a good way to start it. And also, back in the corner, you can write down questions and we'll take some public questions along the way. And here is the one that will be knocking sense into you guys to make sure that you keep within your time limits. So after your minute initial introduction, then we'll ask a question to individuals, and then you'll have 90 seconds, the two that are on the same on one side, and then the opposition will have 90 seconds each person to say, and then the people who were asked the question initially will then have 30 to respond. Make sense? Did everybody set your fantasy football lineups?
Is it 1 minute or two on the initial?
1 minute to start with. So let's meet everybody first off. Who drew straw number one? State Senator Merv Repeal out of the Ralston area. Thanks for being here. Next to him is State Senator Bob Christ out of Omaha. Don Klein is in the third chair. He is the Douglas County Attorney. And then at the end, last but not least, is Randy Rittenauer. He's a former Johnson and Gage County Attorney, now private practice in Lincoln. We will start with opening statements to State Senator Merv Repeal.
Thank you all for being here. It's a very sobering subject to talk about the death penalty. And I'm not here because it's an easy topic, but because it's a difficult topic and one that deserves discussion. I do not pretend to be an expert on the topic at hand and have no lust for the victim's revenge. My life experience dictates who I am as an individual. A Catholic priest one time told me, the one that lives the longest sees the most, and so I've had some of that experience, as you can tell by the color of my hair. I want to introduce myself a little bit. I was raised on a farm. I joined the Navy, was served as a hospital corpsman, was then a hospital administrator at Bergen Mercy Hospital for 18 years, children's for 15 years. I spent some time with Ernst & Young doing hospital feasibility studies, so I have some familiarity with how that process goes and the assumptions there. I have been a Methodist by religion for 40 years. I'll come back maybe to that. I do support life for the innocent, the unborn, and the option of the death penalty for the guilty of heinous crimes, or heinous murders, as I like to say. was told to stop.
Wow, look at that, following the rules right off the bat. Next up, State Senator Bob Christ.
Do you need 30 seconds?
I'm not sure we can yield time. I don't want to do the math.
Very quickly, I've been a state senator for 8 years, and I have 2 years left. I was appointed by Governor Heineman and elected twice to serve the 10th legislative district in the state of Nebraska. I've heard the death penalty issue for 7 out of my 8 years and have studied the issue extensively. So I look forward to conversation tonight and the questions that will come from you and also from Brian Master. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Don Klein, Douglas County Attorney. You have 1 minute.
1 minute. Thanks, Brian. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this event together. I think it's so important that voters be informed, and that's what I said I would do tonight. I said I didn't come here to debate really or try to convince anybody of anything, but try to inform you with regards to my background and experience, and that is I was a deputy county attorney out of law school. I was in private practice. I was a defense lawyer. I won murder cases as a defense lawyer, and then was the chief deputy Douglas County attorney, and then was the head of the criminal bureau for the Department of Justice for the state, and then I've been the elected county attorney here in Douglas County for 10 years. And I suppose really if you look back, I probably, realistically, I probably handled more of these kinds of cases, first-degree murder cases, than anybody has in our history, unfortunately, I can say. But that's what I'm here to do tonight, is inform. I've testified before the Judiciary Committee before in the legislature. I'm very respectful of the opinions and the deliberation that the senators put in on this topic, but I'd like to inform you on my experience and my opinion also tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Next up is Randy Rittenhour.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing us to get together and talk about this tonight. And my perspective is probably not that much different from Don Klein's. I have been a practicing attorney for just shy of 25 years. Have practiced in 4 different states. I've been prosecutor for about half of that time, criminal defense attorney the rest of the time. I was Johnson County attorney and did a lot of work in prosecutions of Tecumseh State Correctional Institution, and I was then Gage County attorney, and really my story is about the Beacker 6. I was the county attorney who led the joint task force along with the Attorney General's office that found that the Beacker 6 were in fact not guilty of the crime. We had started that believing that they were guilty of crime, and that's how we set up our task force to prove that. At the end of that, I came to the conclusion that obviously they were not guilty, and that we had some serious issues with the issue of death penalty.
All right, we'll get to the first question that was on the list for the League of Women Voters. And we'll begin with, I know you guys have kind of some gray areas, but for the sake of just argument, Don and Merv will answer the first question. Merv, State Senator Repeal, how did you come to your position and did it change over time? Was there an aha moment for you?
Well, I don't know that there was an aha moment per se. Again, a little bit of my background. My late wife's dad was a sheriff from Adams County here in Nebraska, and I grew up as a farm kid, very much law and order. We had rules that we followed, and my sense is I believe very much in protection of the innocent. I have a concern with the evil. I have a concern about particular cases, the most heinous murders, that one of them out of Scotts Bluff, and I don't know whether we have time to get into that detail of a 3-year-old boy's skull was crushed, the boy was cut up, fed to a dog, and I struggle with life, even with parole, if parole in fact protects them from ever getting that. I'm not sure that that exists. So, I really haven't had an aha moment either way that made me for it or would make me turn around.
All right, thank you, State Senator. Don Klein? Hope you've got your mic down.
This more, because I saw some people saying
Oh, they weren't able to hear it as well?
Right. So, as far as that goes, my opinion, I testified in the judiciary for the legislature several times. I did a seminar, in fact, years ago when there was an issue about the secondary murder statute changing for the legislature. By the last time I testified about the death penalty, my opinion was, I said that I'm a proponent of the death penalty in certain unique, extreme circumstances. But I had reservations. I told the Judiciary Committee I had reservations just because of the, quite frankly, I don't know what word to use, the manner, the inability or the incompetence with regard to the state in the function of carrying out the law generally anyway. We've had somebody that's from Douglas County, Kerry D. Moore, who's been on death row for 35 years. So, I mean, that's a problem in and of itself. So that, I have some extreme reservations, but I think in my own thought process, and I know I'm probably a little biased because of some of the cases that I've seen and that I've handled over the years. You know, Timothy McVeigh, who blows up the courthouse and kills 150 people in a daycare center, the Boston bomber, somebody who is doing life in prison already and kills a guard because they figure, what do I have to lose? Those are certain cases that I think that there needs to at least be that penalty available in those certain extreme cases. I've had 2 cases where individuals I've prosecuted got the death penalty. They haven't received the death penalty, they were sentenced to the death penalty. They tortured and murdered children after sexually assaulting them. Multiple ones in one case and a single child in another one. They had a history. So that's my personal opinion. It comes from the experience I've had, and I've given it a lot of weight. I've deliberated in my own mind, in my conscience about this form of punishment, and that's where I'm at.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to State Senator Bob Christ. The question again, just in case you don't recall, just how did you come to your position? Was there an aha moment, and has it changed or evolved over time?
In the 7 years that we dealt with the subject matter, and I was on the Judiciary Committee hearing those arguments, it became very apparent to me that there was not a capability of carrying out the death sentence. The drugs that are identified, obviously we're trying to find a humane way to put people to death. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? You can't hang them, you can't put them in an electric chair, so we've decided that a lethal injection is the way to go. The problem is we cannot import the drugs. It's illegal. The FDA and DEA has made it illegal. The drugs can't come into the United States because the manufacturer won't allow them to be used to put people to death. So I looked at the inability to actually carrying out the death penalty as one of the things that caused me great concern. That and the cost. The cost of doing business and keeping people on death row, and the over 40 appeals that are allowed. I think it's actually 40, but nearly 40 appeals that are allowed in that process that cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And I'll make one other comment. I served 21 years in the Air Force, and I know that the federal government can put someone to death. And I think that in the Norfolk situation, and in a situation where something is done on federal property, like the Timothy McVeigh situation, they will. They will put someone to death. So that changed my mind.
Thank you, Bob. Randy Ridnow.
For me, most of my career, I've been a strong proponent of the death penalty. I was a very conservative prosecutor and a very aggressive prosecutor. I will tell you, right out of law school, I became a legislative aide and worked in the legislature when Willie Owen was killed. And I recall the party atmosphere that was around the penitentiary at the time. And the next day, the somber atmosphere that was at the legislature. And I know that it really profoundly affected a lot of people. It started me to think a little bit, but I really put that aside. As I was a prosecutor, clear up until the time that I got to Gage County and began to deal with the Viagra 6 case, in which we clearly believed that those 6 were guilty, and we did everything we could to try to prove they were guilty, and then turned around and found out that in fact that wasn't the case at all. All 43 pieces of evidence came back as vacant of one unknown male. That's where things started to really change for me, because then I began to realize that even with the best of intentions, we can get it wrong. And not only can we get it wrong, but that was the largest single wrongful conviction in terms of the number of people in the history of the United States. We didn't just get it wrong, we really got it wrong. So at that point, considering the fact that at least during the trial, the prosecutor had discussed the death penalty, the possibility that that could have happened with those people made me realize that we just don't have the system to be able to make sure that we're not going to kill the innocent.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Senator Repeal or Don Klein, you each have 30 seconds if you would like to just respond to some of what you heard.
Yeah, like I said before, I respect everyone's opinion. I think what I would hope after we get done here is that everybody takes as much time and thought process about this and weighs it as heavily as they should, as the senators did, before they vote. Okay? But I don't agree necessarily about the cost factor. I've had, I suppose, 60, 70 cases that people got life, and believe me, they appeal and they post-convict as much as anybody else does. So we deal with those folks all the time. And then with regard to the after 6, my personal opinion is that one person went to trial, everybody else pled guilty. And so there was a lot of incompetence that took place, and I don't think it had anything to do with the death penalty. I think it had to do with the investigators that were involved, maybe even the defense attorneys that were involved. And I know Randy wasn't involved in the prosecution, but obviously there were mess ups there. But I don't think you can blame it on the fact that there's a death penalty. I'm out of time, otherwise I'd keep talking.
Do you have any thoughts, Senator Repeal?
I think the availability that we talk about with getting drugs to be able to invoke the death penalty, we seem to be able to come up with assisted suicide drugs that you can put a pill at the bedside with a glass of water, and someone can take their own life. I think the other thing is we have 10 people on death row, and none of them claim to be innocent. And quite frankly, we've not had anyone put to death since 1897. I think there was one possible wrongful execution.
97, I think.
Okay, thank you.
19. All right, so we'll go to the next question. This one will be for the first one will be Randy Rittenauer and Senator Christ, as put together by the League of Women Voters. So if the death penalty is reinstated in Nebraska, how do we ensure it's applied correctly, consistently, even-handedly, and in a non-discriminatory manner? Senator Christ?
First of all, I don't think that if the death penalty is put back into place, we're going to have any quick and easy fix to the lethal injection process. I think the drugs are still going to be an issue. Secondly, I don't think the state of Nebraska, the people of Nebraska, want to go through the super secret kind of legislation that Texas and others have in order to acquire those drugs. I think you, the citizens of Nebraska, want to know how we got it, and if we got it legally in order to carry out the death penalty. And if you look at how other states have done it and got away with it, I don't think we put up with it. I believe that if we would reinstate the death penalty, we'll be right back where we are. We'll have people on death row that are not going to be put to death. We've had 3 in 57 years. In 57 years, we put 3 people to death, and we haven't done any of that since 1997. So, although I think we will do it right if it was ever given a chance, I have great faith in the state of Nebraska to do it right, but those are the 3 caveats that I would have in terms of getting back reinstated and actually conducting death penalties and executing them.
Mr. Rittenauer?
Well, first of all, with respect to the after six, and from my point of view there, I'm not sure that the death penalty can be carefully and effectively administered. Certainly, we still have the possibility that someone is going to be wrongfully convicted and put to death for something they didn't do. And if we have that happen, then we've actually elected to run the risk of killing the innocent along with the guilty. And if we're going to do that, well, I just don't think we want to do that, because I don't think that's not the kind of people we are in Nebraska. We want to be able to be sure, and point of fact, we thought we were sure that we could be after six, and we were wrong. And so if that can happen, then I just don't think it's acceptable for us to do it. The other problem with that death penalty is actually having law enforcement utilize it as a threat, or the prosecution utilize it as a threat to get a plea bargain. If you're going to do something like that, then essentially what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I don't want you to go to trial. I don't want you to actually exercise your right to your constitutional rights to a trial, to be able to prove your innocence. I mean, if the state's got enough resources, they ought to be able to prove that they're guilty. So we shouldn't be avoiding trials or the expensive trials, especially when somebody's life is at stake.
Now, Don Klein?
Sure. 96% of the cases, the criminal cases that are prosecuted in the United States, are prosecuted by local prosecutors, not the federal government. They don't really get involved in local prosecution, particularly homicide cases. The statement that there's been 37 people in 57 years who have been executed by the death penalty, I think it's all an argument almost too from our standpoint of it is very sparingly used, and it's very uniquely used with regard to the process. People should understand how the process works, and I'm not sure everybody does. Prosecutor files a first-degree murder case. The legislature has told us what are aggravating circumstances. If we file those along with the information, if we get a conviction of first-degree murder, then the jury has to find beyond a reasonable doubt that those aggravating circumstances exist. Then, if they find that those exist beyond a reasonable doubt, which the legislature told us these are aggravators, then a three-judge panel is appointed. A three-judge panel weighs those aggravating circumstances against any mitigating circumstance, which can be any evidence that the defense wants to put out about this person, their childhood, their mental state, all those issues. And then the three-judge panel makes the determination as to what the sentence should be. And they have to be unanimous. So if one judge says no death penalty, then there's no death penalty. So there's a very layered process. I think that the law as the legislature set forth in the death penalty is the way it should be done. And I think our United States Supreme Court has looked at that. Our Nebraska Supreme Court has looked at that and said, yes, that's a proper process to use with this type of punishment. My time's up.
Senator Repeal?
Thank you. I know we've talked a lot about the be after six, and I'm not sure what that's not an outlier. My sense was that in the paper that the prosecutors avoided spending $350 for a DNA test. I think that if that story is correct in the paper, that was gross mismanagement. I also want to say that recently, I've been there 2 years, I did support DNA legislation that Senator Pansing-Brook introduced, because I too do not want someone that's innocent to be executed. I also believe that there's a need for quality legal counsel, and there's also a need for honest collection of evidence and a preservation of that evidence for the entire life of that individual that's committed.
Great. Mr. Christ or Mr. Rittenauer, you have 30 seconds if you care to respond. Mr. Christ, looks like you have something.
Yeah, just very quickly, what county attorneys just described is absolutely true. So logically, if you have one trial, sentence someone to life in prison, which is not, which is life in prison without parole, that's one trial. But the complication of what the legislature has put into law is 3 trials. So just on that fact alone, logically, you have to think it's more expensive to try a death penalty case.
Mr. Rittenhour?
Certainly, it is more expensive to try a death penalty case. I don't think there's any question there. When you talk about taking measures to try and make sure that there is no mismanagement, you have to remember we've got 94 counties. I'm sorry. You've got all the counties in Nebraska. I was going to say that many county attorneys, but that's not quite correct. And I'm sorry. Can't hear me, huh?
Oh, well, it's time to stop.
93 counties.
Sorry,
Did you want to clarify so we could hear you real quick?
Oh, I mean, I get extra time.
I'm willing to.
93 counties. Yeah, well, the point is that there's an awful lot of counties out there who need an awful lot more help with respect to how they're trained to be able to go about these kinds of cases. And I've been out there in the rural areas, and I've seen how those officers work. Those people are excellent people, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have the resources, the expertise to handle these kind of cases. And mistakes are made, and that's what we've got to worry about.
All right, thank you. The next question is for Mr. Klein and Senator Repeal. We'll begin with Mr. Repeal. You kind of alluded to this in your opening. The question is the death penalty compatible with the no exception pro-life position?
I think that's a very personal judgment to me, very much so, because to me, the pro-life are based on the innocent, and the ones that with heinous crimes that would qualify for that are pure and simple evil. I would like to say, as a Methodist, I've been a Methodist for 40 years, I wish the Methodists were as concerned about abortion, and especially third-term abortion, as they are about the death penalty. So,
Mr. Klein?
Thank you. I'm pro-life, I always have been. But I think you can differentiate when you're talking about people who take someone's life in the manner that we're talking about, obviously from the standpoint of an unborn child. So, I mean, I don't think there's any real comparison there. And like I said, I know that I'm biased because I've seen some horrific, terrible cases where, like I said, the cases that I've had where children were tortured, sexually assaulted and murdered and thrown away, and to try and compare that to something different, like an unborn child is quite different. So, when we talk about the death penalty, anyway, like I said, I've deliberated myself about this and had real questions in my own mind about this. But I think that's why the responsibility you have as a county attorney, I have to answer to people every 4 years. Everything that I do in my job is transparent. You know how every case is handled. You know how the result is. You know how it was done. I answer questions, and I think that's important. And that's why you have to put some faith in the persons that's handling the job. If this law was gone, quite frankly, it would make my job easier. I wouldn't have to worry about it. I wouldn't have to think, should I look at the evidence and make a determination about the aggravating circumstances, weigh those in different cases. It would be simpler. But I don't think just saying, hey, let's just get rid of it and make things simpler is the answer. I think it's the right thing that we have a law like this for those extreme cases.
Senator Christ?
Could you answer the question again? Ask the question again.
Is the death penalty compatible with the no exception pro-life position?
No. My position is from birth to natural death. And speaking of horrific things, and I'm not feeding off of Mr. Klein's testimony, I'm just gonna tell you, I've been to war. I've seen people blown up. I've seen people heads cut off in Chop Chop Square in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I've seen executions up close and personal. And to me, that's a life-changing event, and it is not acceptable in terms of a deviation.
Mr. Rittenhour.
So far as, up here, so far as a comparison with, I'm pro-life. I come from a Southern Baptist background. I do believe that reading the Ten Commandments, when it's talking about killing, it's you shall do no murder, and that's entirely different. So in terms of whether or not I believe that the death penalty is a problem of pro-life, with a pro-life position, I don't think that's the case. In fact, what I think is that each person who does murder somebody is deserving of death. I still haven't changed that position, but my point is simply that we don't have the capacity to make sure that we don't make a mistake. So we don't want to be the ones who actually have blood on our hands.
Mr. Klein, Mr. Repeal, you have 30-second follow-up if you care to use it.
And I don't disagree with Randy about that, and that's why I think it's so important when you're doing a case like that, that you are absolutely sure beyond any doubt at all with regards to the guilt of the person that you're prosecuting. In the two cases that I've had, there was a tremendous amount of DNA evidence, Roy Ellis and the death of Amber Harris, and Arthur Lee Gales and the death of Latar and Tamara Chandler. So, I mean, I think that's what you have to look at. I don't care what kind of case it is, okay? I couldn't live with somebody being in jail that was innocent of the crime. So it doesn't, whether it's a death penalty or not the death penalty, I mean, we look at every case, and I think we want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do when we convict somebody of any crime.
Mr. Repeal?
Thank you. One of the things that I've contemplated is that maybe in these 93 counties where you see one murder every 300 years, hopefully, is that you may have to have a resource that's based out of Lincoln, and the local law enforcement, their job is to simply put out the yellow tape and secure the thing so that you don't get a contaminated case. You send in a mobile van in the middle of the night, if that's what it takes, to be able to collect the specimens and to be able to make sure that you get a valid case. The cost of that, I will yield to the chairman of the executive committee to come up with that money.
All right, we're to some questions. If you got here late, you can fill out some cards back there. So this is a question from the audience. This one I'll change things up a little bit and just maybe have the representatives from the UNICAM answer. If the death penalty is reinstated, will the UNICAM adopt a new method of execution, and what would it be? This one would start with Senator Christ.
I would defer to the lawyers in the room to tell you that I don't really believe there's any other alternative than lethal injection at this point in terms of constitutionality. I believe that is my understanding of it. So if it's reinstated, we're back to square one and trying to acquire the drugs in order to have lethal injection.
Now, Senator Chris has been there for 7 years, and I've been there for 2, so he has more experience with what the authority is of the legislative body.
Well, since Senator Chris said, let's get a legal opinion, we have 2 lawyers up here.
My point is, I do think it falls in the purview of the governor.
It's my understanding that when we talk about the state, it's the Department of Corrections, and the governor's office is in charge of trying to figure out the cocktail or whatever you're supposed to use in that regard, and that's my understanding. And I think, under our Supreme Court, everything's cruel and unusual punishment other than the lethal injection. I think maybe Utah still might be able to do the firing squad if they give somebody a choice, but I'm not sure about that. I shouldn't, but I remember that being a case years ago. But I think that lethal injection is the way that it has to be with our Supreme Court.
Randy, right now, or do you think that's similar? You're the other legal mind up here.
I agree with Don. I think it was Gary Gilmore, wasn't it?
Right.
Who, that's what I thought of immediately, was a firing squad in Utah. I don't know whether they still do it or not. But certainly the legislature establishes the method, but of course the Supreme Court is going to determine whether or not what's cruel and unusual, what's not. And you're right, I think it's the lethal injection option. That's about it.
Responses from the senators? You deferred, so yeah. See, we can change up a little stuff. Here's another question from our audience. It's similar to one that the League of Women Voters had here on the list too. Is the death penalty inherently unconstitutional? We're back to Don Klein and Senator Repeal, whichever you would like to answer first.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Senator.
Everyone's so cordial.
Yeah, really, we're on our best behavior. You know, it was noted earlier that the federal government is still in a situation of being able to have the death penalty. And in the case down in the Justice Department is going for the death penalty in was it Charleston, where the young man went into the church and the Attorney General, the sitting Attorney General is going after the death penalty. So they're not convinced that it's unconstitutional yet at this time. The makeup of the Supreme Court, time will tell. Time will tell. I do know in some of the reading I've done is that the death penalty is waning across the country.
Mr. Klein?
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, I don't think it's so much the act of the death penalty itself that would be, I think it's the process and the questions that have come about through the process that create the issues. The fact of how do you differentiate one case from another case where this person got the death penalty under these sets of facts and circumstances and this person didn't get the death penalty? How do you differentiate in different states where jurors don't make the determination about aggravated circumstances, or the Supreme Court now says they have to because that's part of the evidence or facts that you have to make the decision on. So there's been issues with regard to the process, the manner it's meted out over the course of time, way different prosecutors handle it in different offices. That's an issue. Amy Jacobson's here tonight, as prosecutor in my office. She has a difference of opinion than I do. She's wrote a little article about that, and I respect her opinion, even though it's different than mine. So everybody can have an opinion here, but I think it's important that there's a lot of thought process about it and understanding about how the process works before you make a decision about a vote on it. And so that's why I'm appreciative of this forum tonight.
Mr. Rittenhour, the death penalty inherently unconstitutional?
I don't think it's inherently unconstitutional. I do think that it's certainly on its way out, and regardless of what the vote is here, I think within a generation you're going to see most states, and including Nebraska, simply stop it because everybody begins to understand that it is just not doing what the death penalty is supposed to be doing, which is to be a deterrent. It's simply not. I don't think most criminals make a decision about whether or not they're going to murder somebody based on whether or not they're going to get the death penalty. They'll think about it afterwards, but I just don't think that's part of their thought process when they're actually involved. And with respect to, also with respect to officers out in the counties and law enforcement that's out in other areas outside of large cities that have a lot of resources, I'll tell you that most of those law enforcement officers will be offended if you tell them that they're not competent enough to go ahead and handle these cases. And so there is resistance to any kind of coming in with the state patrol. I know that I had to, in a number of cases, actually put my foot down and say, yes, we're going to bring in the kind of help that we really need on a particular murder case. And it is difficult to decide which cases are, in fact, the kind of cases that are so heinous, or would be so heinous. I mean, I had a family member who was murdered. She was stabbed to death with 16 stabs, brutally raped, and I have a friend that's killed as well, and you know, they're no more or less deserving of justice than anybody else.
Senator Chris?
Based upon my reading and understanding of the Supreme Court's rulings, as well as reading the Constitution, it is not unconstitutional.
Any follow-ups? Senator Reedy, Mr. Klein, you guys good?
What's that?
Any follow-ups?
No, I mean, I think we agree that it's not, at least at this point in time, certainly the courts have ruled previously that the manner that it was carried out was unconstitutional as being cruel and unusual punishment. But as I said, right now it is. And so, again, it's a situation where you have to have faith that people are doing their job on all sides, I think, the way that they're supposed to. Everybody has a role in the criminal justice system: the prosecutor, defense counsel, the judge, the jury, and everybody. If everybody's doing their role the way that they're supposed to, we think we're going to get the right answer. So that's the goal of the process.
Senator Reedy?
I have nothing.
Very good. All right, here's another one from the audience. I'll simplify it a little bit. We kind of discussed it a little bit, so maybe it's, so this would be for Randy Rittenauer and Senator Christ. It really comes down to, there's drugs for some assisted suicide. Why does it have to be this combination for injectable drugs? I think the bigger question is, how can Texas do this and Nebraska couldn't?
Right, well, I think I alluded to it earlier. Some states have gone around the issue and have put in some element of non-transparency into how they require the drugs to use the cocktail to actually have a lethal injection. And I think I'm pretty clear before when I said, I don't think you'll put up with that. That's not something the state of Nebraska, I believe, is accustomed to doing in terms of lack of transparency or going around the issue to get something done like that. So I personally would vote for it, and I think that's in the best interest of my constituents and the entire 1.9 million people in Nebraska.
Mr. Rittenauer?
Could you repeat the question for me?
It basically examines, look, there's drugs available for assisted suicide in the country. Why does it have to be this combination of injectable drugs? And how could Texas get their hands on it and Nebraska couldn't for years?
Well, I seem to recall a recent event that I was at where an anesthesiologist was talking about the fact that their national organization has forbidden them from being involved in this. So if most of the pharmacies and medical communities are telling their people that it's unethical to do it, then Texas is going to have to do it in a way that in most cases probably violates some of those ethics. I can't see how they can get around it any other way, so they're going to be secret about it. And you know, I'm not in favor of assisted suicide, so because I'm pro-life as well, so I just don't think it's a viable option, and certainly we shouldn't be sneaking around trying to get the or going off to some other country and just getting whatever we can get our hands on to do that.
Senator Reedy?
I would say an anesthesiologist, as a physician coming from a hospital background, would have a conflict because of the Hippocratic Oath, and I would also contend that the price of an anesthesiologist would be a very expensive one. That's supposed to be fun. Okay. Yeah, you do. I also think that there are ways. There's nitrogen gas that's been talked about. There are other ways. The bigger question is not how to complete it. It's the will of the people that they want to have executions. Getting it done can be made happen in one way or another. It's just whether you agree with it or not is the issue.
Mr. Klein?
That really isn't my responsibility, quite honestly. I'm part of the executive branch, and we carry out the law. So understand that we have the death penalty in Nebraska right now. And so it's my job, I have to carry out the law, whatever it is. I mean, if it's not on the books, then it's not on the books. I certainly think it should be on the books. Like I said, I've given that opinion, but we carry that out. And it's very frustrating from my standpoint. We're in the trenches, okay? So I'm trying the case, and I'm trying to a jury, and they have to make findings about first-degree murder. They make findings about aggravating circumstances. The 3-judge panel gets appointed. We go through this whole process because that's the law on those kinds of cases. And then the state just kind of does whatever. And so it's frustrating from our part because I hate to put everyone through that in a system if it's not something that's going to be the law. So I hope everyone understands that. Not that it's a problem, it's just why are we going through all of this stuff if the legislature says, hey, we can't do this, or that we can't get the cocktail, or we can't, it's not going to happen. So here we are, we're going through this process of trying these cases, making the jury have to weigh these decisions when they think it may be a case that somebody could get the death penalty, which is everybody in the process works very hard to ensure that justice is done. And I'm not just saying that as a prosecutor, I'm saying that the jurors who are in those kinds of cases, the judges, the 3-judge panel, and so we need to figure this out one way or the other. And so we'll enforce the law, whatever the law is going to be. But the cocktail or whatever it is, the drugs, that's something the state's going to have to figure out. And my wife's a nurse, and she certainly said that she could figure it out. I mean, that there's mannerisms that certainly the medical profession knows that of putting people to sleep.
Well, looks like you just volunteered your wife to. Randy Rittenauer, Senator Chris, do you have a follow-up?
No. Thank you. I think Don's right. The effect on families as they deal with all of this horror when someone is killed is great. To put them through this kind of process and then have them think, well, okay, I've got justice because this person is going to be executed. And then to have them sit there for 35 years watching it not happen is just as harmful and more harmful, I would say. Well, it's not harmful, essentially. Justice is there if this person is put away for the rest of their lives. Certainly the guy that killed my cousin is serving 100 years in the Iowa State Penitentiary, and I'm fine with that.
Senator Christ?
Yeah, I will respond very quickly, and it comes from a statement that has been made about the executive branch carrying out the issue. Matter of history, matter of record. 49 senators debated, 3 rounds of debate. We voted on it, 33 initially, and then we overrode the governor with 30 votes. There's 49 districts across the state. You elected those people to go in and make good decisions. Some of us have heard those issues for 7+ years, some for just 2 years, some for just 1, but the votes were there. Your legislature's spoken, and I ask you to support those decisions because I think it's the right one.
All right, next question comes from the public. It kind of digs deeper into an earlier question, which examines, and this one is for Don Klein and Senator Repeal. If the current justice system is fair, why are the great majority of those sentenced to death from poor and disadvantaged backgrounds? They are less likely to have access to top lawyers. We'll start with Mr. Klein on that.
Okay, thank you. There's that question that in the criminal justice system, there are questions about, obviously we try to find the answer for why people commit crimes. Sometimes it's because they're socially disadvantaged, socioeconomically, or they haven't been educated, they've had poor upbringing, they don't have a chance at times. It's very sad to say. They have used drugs to an extreme amount where it impacts their ability to make the right decisions. And in fact, with that question about ability to make decisions, we've changed the law with regard to juveniles. We used to be on a first-degree murder case, and I've had several that have convicted juveniles of first-degree murder. They can't get life now. The judge has to have an option of other than life, 40 years to life. And so we've resentenced, I think, 17 juveniles from Douglas County that were convicted of first-degree murder. So that's taken into, that aspect of it has been taken into consideration. The juvenile mind is informed enough that they should be sentenced the way that adults are. But that's always a question about, and that's something that, again, when we look at a case, we have to make a determination that we're being even-minded and fair with the way that justice gets meted out across the board, no matter who it is. And to make sure that, when I'm trying a case, and I'll give you some examples that are going on right now, I actually have to do some things sometimes to make sure the defendant's rights are protected, even while I'm trying the case. And that's part of the process. And people might say, well, gee, you're the prosecutor. No, my job is to get justice, and it's to make sure that it's done the right way. And so you have to have faith that the person who's doing that is doing it the right way, and ensuring that the defendant gets a fair shake and a right trial. Otherwise, we never get done with the case.
Senator Repeal.
I think the comment was made in terms of race, black versus white, kind of, and I read one today, and one of the things about participating in this kind of thing is makes you pay a lot of attention, makes you go back and read a lot of things, or at least it does for me. And it said the majority, this particular article said, the majority of the white people that are murdered by white people, and the majority of black people that are murdered by black people. I found that rather interesting. There was one article, someone could maybe take exception to that, but I don't think murder's murder, and I think as the justice with her eyes blinded needs to look at it that way. It is what it is. It's murder.
All right, we'll switch to the other side. Randy Rittenauer. Essentially the question is, how can things be fair when the majority of those sentenced to death are from poor and disadvantaged backgrounds?
I think it's a fact of life that in our society, that's who gets prosecuted more than others. If you're going to talk about who's got the better lawyers, I think that the public defender system actually has some pretty excellent lawyers I've run across. And one of the things I point out to some of my clients is that some of those defense lawyers have been practicing, or public defenders have been practicing for a lot of years, and they know an awful lot about their own particular system, and they do a good job. But so I don't know that there's an issue about not having good lawyers. So I don't know that necessarily that issue of money is a real issue, but it is a sad fact that the majority of individuals that are prosecuted come from disadvantaged backgrounds. That's where the crime is for the most part. Certainly somebody that comes from a very let me just say I don't want to be misconstrued. I'm not saying poor people commit more crimes. I'm saying that they're subjected to an awful lot of criminal activity, and part of that is because of the poverty that's in their communities. I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
Senator Chris?
I can't disagree with my three colleagues up here, but I want to take this opportunity to tell you that I have, in my time in the legislature, I have met district attorneys, county attorneys, public defenders. With our JDAI, Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiatives, we have taken great strides to protect children and make sure that they are treated like children as much as possible within the system. And I have the utmost respect for the credibility and the job that our county attorneys, Mr. Klein, Mr. Rittenhour, and others around the state have done. I don't think there's a deliberate attempt at all. These are true professionals. These guys know what they're doing. And so I would compliment them on representing and prosecuting fairly to the extent of the law. And they're in the business of getting justice, which I have to admire. I've seen your job, guys, and I don't want it.
Mr. Klein, Senator Repeal, follow-up response? Either of you guys?
Just look at the resource issue that, you know, I don't disagree. You know, we are, my thought process about crime is you can't make your community better by putting as many people in jail as you can. That's why we have a drug court. That's why we have the middle resources we have in juvenile court. That's why I have a diversion program. That's why I have a young adult court. Those are vital processes, and the method of solving crime is to me giving people education, jobs, socioeconomic factors in the community, giving people hope. Those are the things that are going to make our community better and solve crime issues. You can't prosecute your way to you know, the idea isn't to put everybody in jail. It's to, hey, let's make our community a better place to live by making it so people don't commit crimes and they have opportunities, and they have jobs, and they have an education from early education. I'm part of an organization called Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. And I think it's a great organization that talks about getting early education, and that's one of the ways that we fight crime. So yeah, it's a problem, but we have to figure out other ways to fight crime just generally, besides prosecution, by putting people in jail.
Senator Repeal?
Well, I'd like to echo what Senator Christus said in terms of the performance of attorneys generals and prosecutors across the state. I think, you know, obviously at times there can be either incompetence or corruption that comes into the situations, but I think overall we have, you know, a stellar group, a good state, and we're not without fault, but I think we constantly work at it. There isn't anyone that I can imagine that's there to try to go out of their way to rack up a score that they're going to have one more prosecution so that they can move on to some bigger job.
All right, well, that's our first hour of 3 hours that we're talking about. We have about 10 minutes left, so I know there's a lot of questions, and I think I'm just going to kind of pare down and just, you don't need 90 seconds, I think, on it. We'll just kind of go down the list here. Senator Repeal, is the death penalty a moral or ethical issue for you?
Is it to be one or the other, or neither of the?
Well, it could be neither.
Well,
Something else.
you know, I don't think that you ever take a life that just doesn't have some moral judgment to it. The ethics to me on would be the process of getting to that conviction, to make sure that you have qualified legal counsel, you have the scientific evidence and the scientific process to make sure that you're looking at this as fair as you can. That's the ethical way. The moral side is a very personal, judgmental thing that, you know, I don't want to get into biblical stuff. So that's, you each have your own spirituality, and you have to deal with it accordingly.
Senator Chris?
I wouldn't call it either moral or ethical by itself. It is a question of whether we can honestly, effectively, efficiently, and absolutely put someone to death with no question that there is some innocence involved. I believe that we've had examples across the United States and even here in Nebraska that tell us that we can't with absolute surety that we're doing the right thing. You can't resurrect Lazarus in this case. So once that death penalty is carried out, it's done.
Get biblical.
There we go.
Mr. Klein?
I would say my goodness, it's both. This is a heavy-duty job, and it's not just the death penalty. You know, as I said, when our prosecutors look at any case, okay, it's a tremendous responsibility that you have when you're going to charge somebody with any crime. And it's a lot of power. And so it's very important when I talk to the people that work with me that we do things the right way, we do it ethically, and we do it morally, and we do it responsibly. And our goal is, like I said, to make this community a better place to live. We make prosecutorial discretion decisions every day on many cases. What's the best form for us to send this case? Do we send it to juvenile court? Do we send this person to diversion? Do we send them to young adult court? Do we send them to drug court? Do we file aggravating circumstances? Do we file a habitual criminal charge on certain situations? These are heavy-duty decisions that we make on a daily basis. And you're always hoping that people make it the right way, we talk to each other every day. We as prosecutors will meet and we'll talk about the cases that we're handling. We'll talk to the police department. We'll talk about the evidence that we have. We talk about the responsibility that we have, and we talk about what's best. And we want to make sure we do it the right way. So yes, these are heavy duty. This is the heaviest duty when you're talking about the death penalty, but every case is that way. And to make sure you're doing it the right way and you make the decisions that you make for the right reasons.
Randy, right now?
I agree. I think it is both a moral and ethical question. For me, I think it truly boils down to two dangers that you have when you're going to go ahead and have a death penalty. One, you accidentally get it wrong, and that's what the Beatrice 6 showed. Two, you have somebody who actually is not acting in an ethical manner, and you had that when you had the Murdoch killings and Mr. Kofed, who planted evidence. So you have the possibility of both. And it's not a theoretical possibility here in Nebraska, it's fact. So in that situation, no matter how well everybody else works within the system, it's not going to work. And we have the potential to actually put the innocent to death. And then we have not only blood on our hands, and again, somebody who murders somebody who actually does it deserves it. But if we have the possibility of making a mistake, then we have innocent blood on our hands. And I don't think that that's the kind of people we are, morally or ethically.
All right, we're time for closing arguments now. Sorry we weren't able to get to all of your questions. Very good ones, though. Some of them were sort of answered, so hopefully that gave you some thoughts after you turned it in. We'll go backwards this time. You each have a minute here for just your final thoughts, and we'll start with Randy Rittenhour.
Yeah, I get to talk a lot. I don't know if I have too many words. I think I put that across in just what I just said. There is the chance that we're going to get this wrong. And if there's a chance that we're going to get this wrong, then it's better to put that person away. We need to punish murderers, and we need to put them away for life. Not for any term of years, but for life. And let it be that way. And if it's the most heinous crime, great. Let him sit in there and rot. That's fine with me. But if it turns out that science shows later on that we made a mistake, we can correct it. We don't have to go back to the grandchild or the child of somebody that we put to death for the wrong reasons and say to them, gee, we're sorry, but by gosh, now we've got it right, so justice has been done. Well, justice has not been done, and we're the murderers, intentional or otherwise. This is expensive. It's hard on families that are the victims. It's hard on everybody involved, and we don't need this. We can do this simply by punishing them by life in prison.
Mr. Klein.
Sure. You've heard my thoughts, my opinion, that in certain unique, extreme cases, that I think that there needs to be this form of penalty or punishment. And certainly, again, it's a thoughtful process. Like I said, I respect the senators and the hard work they did. I visited with so many of them during the course of the process, and we had great discussions. And they thought very heavily about everything, and they made their decisions, and they voted. And I think they felt they were representing their constituents. Now, apparently, it's going to be up to the people of the state of Nebraska, and I would just hope that everyone would take it as seriously as they did and everyone else did. It's here tonight that you think about it, you make that decision as to whether you think this is a proper form of punishment. Like I said, I have my reasons and thoughts about why we need to have it, but I respect everyone's opinion. This is a democracy, and we should respect each other's opinion. We should have debates like this or talk about things. So like I said, we'll enforce the law, whatever the law is. I have my opinion about what the law should be, but now it's up to the voters, and I hope they weigh it very carefully, extensively, and thoroughly when they make their decision.
John Klein, thank you. Senator Chris, closing statement.
First of all, just a technical point. The Constitution of the United States of Nebraska does not say death without parole, it says death. The implication is life in prison without parole. It says life in prison. The only way that that can be changed for someone is if it's commuted by the board, which is made up by the governor, the attorney general, and the secretary of state. So those sentences cannot be commuted, and even then, it has to go back in the appeal process. So it is a really stiff penalty. I voted 4 times, once on general, once on select, once on final reading, and then once to override the veto of the governor. And I don't take that veto override lightly. I ask you to stay with your legislature, with those representatives that have voted to repeal the death penalty. I think it's the right decision. Future legislatures may come back and prove us wrong, but I ask you to vote that way. Thank you.
Senator Chris, thank you. And we'll wrap things up with Senator Repeal.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to commend my fellow panel members. The civility tonight has been good, much better than we often see on the unicameral floor, as the senator can say. This particular topic is a very sober topic and one to be taken lightly. And this summer I conducted a legislative District 12, that's my district, which is Omaha, Millard, and Walston. And I had 457 constituents respond. One of the questions in that particular survey was, should the death penalty be retained for the most heinous murders? And 75% said yes, 21% responded no. So that's a 3 to 1 margin in support of the death penalty. I say that because part of our job, part of my job, is not just my opinion, but the opinion of my constituents, the people that I go door to door and talk to. And so I'm to represent them. So that's part of my issue. Thank you. Thank you all for being here too.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking time to share your thoughts on this issue. Thanks to the audience for coming out. Thanks to the League of Women Voters. Remember November 8th, Election Day.
I want everyone to know that our speakers tonight came very kindly without any remuneration, except for these lovely, very nice mugs. So they get that. And they also received one of these. This is great information about voting. Many of you have voted many times, but you probably know somebody who is a first-time voter. So we always say take some of these because they've got great information. And the other item is a membership application, of course. So
And a free pen.
And a free pen, let's not forget that. This is Jerry Simon.
Thank you. Elaine asked me to finally wrap things up this evening. We hope you know that the League of Women Voters has its own television program. It runs on KPAO, Channel 22, or Cox, on Cox, and Channel 89 with CenturyLink. It airs Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. And we've been doing a series of shows, candidate forums for the election. We've also done a 3-part series on the death penalty. So we urge you to watch those programs. One of them is on morality and justice in the death penalty. The second one is on lethal injection and legal issues in the death penalty. And the final one on religion and the death penalty. And you can find all those programs by linking to our website at omahalwv.org. And then finally, we wanted you to know that we have our voters guide that will be coming out for the election in early October. So we urge you to research the candidates with the voters guide. And we will be jointly sponsoring a candidate forum with the Press Club on October 14th. That'll be at noon for the 2nd Congressional District, where Ed Ashford and Don Bacon are the candidates. So for the League of Women Voters, we urge you to inform yourself about the issues and the candidates, and on November 8th, go vote, Omaha.
you.